Welcome, doctors. We now arrive at a classic exam question area, the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor paradox. You know that ischemic glomeruli rely entirely on angiotensin 2 driven efferent vasoconstriction to maintain their internal filtration pressure. It pinches the exit tube, so the pressure inside the filter stays high enough to work. The clinical trap occurs when a physician initiates an angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor or an angiotensin receptor blocker in a patient with bilateral disease. This drug abruptly abolishes that necessary efferent constriction. Without that back pressure, the glomerular filtration rate absolutely crashes. The result is an immediate dangerous spike in serum creatinine and a precipitous decline in kidney function, often presenting as acute anuric renal failure. If an exam question describes a patient who is started on a new blood pressure medication and returns a week later with a massive spike in creatinine, you must instantly recognize this as bilateral renal artery stenosis unmasked by an angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor. Let us dive deeply into the specific pathology of atherosclerotic renal artery stenosis. This lesion classically presents as an eccentric, calcified cholesterol plaque that is localized strictly to the absolute proximal origin or ostium of the renal artery right where it branches from the aorta. This proximal location and heavily calcified nature define the disease. Demographically, this is a disease of elderly patients burdened with massive systemic cardiovascular risk factors. Do not miss this prognostic reality for the exam. The mere presence of these severe atherosclerotic lesions is an overwhelmingly strong predictor of major morbidity and early mortality from systemic cardiovascular events, particularly massive myocardial infarctions and strokes. The renal artery plaque is a glaring warning sign of systemic vascular destruction. Contrast that directly with fibromuscular dysplasia. Here, the pathology is a chaotic cellular proliferation that heavily distorts the arterial wall, completely devoid of cholesterol or calcification. Classically, this manifests as medial fibroplasia located in the tunica media. Unlike the proximal plaques of atherosclerosis, fibromuscular dysplasia critically involves the middle to distal segments of the renal artery, and bilateral involvement is highly common. The demographics are completely inverted. This strikes young patients, typically between the ages of 15 and 50, exhibiting an overwhelming female predominance. Very important for the exam, the medial fibroplasia pathology of this disease uniquely affects cerebral vessels in a significant percentage of patients. If a medical PG entrance question describes a healthy young female with severe sudden onset hypertension who also has a history of a cerebral aneurysm or carotid web, this should immediately make you think of fibromuscular dysplasia. Even though fibromuscular dysplasia does not involve thick calcified plaques, the dysplastic structural changes severely weaken the vessel wall. This structural weakening creates two major clinical complications you must watch for. First is a profound aneurysm risk. The deformed walls are strongly associated with the formation of large renal artery aneurysms, which carry a severe risk of sudden catastrophic rupture or acute localized thrombosis. Second is the threat of total occlusion. In its most severe forms, the chaotic cellular proliferation can unpredictably progress entirely across the vessel lumen. This causes irreversible total occlusion and sudden infarction of the affected kidney. So while we often say the long-term renal prognosis in these young patients is excellent compared to older atherosclerotic patients, you must recognize these acute vascular emergencies. Let us synthesize the key differences between these two diseases for rapid pattern recognition. The contrast is stark and heavily tested. Atherosclerotic disease hits elderly patients with systemic risk factors, while fibromuscular dysplasia strikes young females between 15 and 50 years of age. The atherosclerotic lesion is a calcified cholesterol plaque at the proximal aortic ostium, requiring physical crushing and a permanent metal stent during intervention. Conversely, the dysplastic lesion is non-calcified, involves the mid to distal artery, and uniquely responds to simple balloon angioplasty without ever needing a stent. If you log the contrasting features into your memory, you will rapidly eliminate incorrect options on any clinical vignette, testing the origins and treatments of secondary hypertension. Once you clinically suspect renal artery stenosis from the red flags we discussed, you must follow a strict, stepwise radiological diagnostic approach. You never jump straight to an invasive angiogram. Your absolute first line screen is a non invasive duplex ultrasonography. If the ultrasound confirms a lesion and you plan a definitive intervention, or if the ultrasound is technically inconclusive but you still highly suspect the disease, you escalate to advanced imaging with either a computed tomographic angiogram or a magnetic resonance angiogram. Advanced imaging is also necessary if you specifically suspect fibromuscular dysplasia or need to visualize smaller accessory vessels. Finally, the definitive gold standard is intra-arterial angiography. But we strictly reserve this invasive step for when we are simultaneously performing the therapeutic intervention. Let us examine our first line screen, duplex ultrasonography. This test combines standard two-dimensional imaging of the anatomy with Doppler technology to actively measure the flow velocity of blood as it rushes through the narrowed vessel. You must memorize the diagnostic thresholds. A peak systolic velocity exceeding 200 centimeters per second generally strongly predicts the presence of a severe lesion that has occluded more than 60% of the vessel lumen. However, to absolutely avoid treating false positives, rigorous trials sometimes demand a strict threshold of greater than 300 centimeters per second. Examiners may also test alternative Doppler indices. So recognize that a renal artery ratio greater than 3.5 or an acceleration ratio index greater than 0.05 also definitively point towards significant stenosis. Beyond raw velocity, the ultrasound provides a critical prognostic metric called the renal resistive index. This is calculated from the Doppler waveforms to assess the vascular resistance deep within the tiny microvessels of the kidney. This index gives us highly valuable predictive information regarding the long-term viability of the kidney tissue if we attempt revascularization. But ultrasound has major limitations. It is highly operator and institution dependent and technically very difficult in obese patients or those with dense overlying bowel gas. Here is a massive clinical trap. Duplex ultrasound is notoriously unreliable for screening fibromuscular dysplasia. It heavily misses the delicate mid to distal dysplastic changes. If your clinical suspicion for fibromuscular dysplasia is high, but the ultrasound is read as normal, you must not stop investigating. You must escalate the imaging. While looking at Doppler waveforms, you must recognize the classic Parvus-Tardus pattern. This is a highly tested radiological hallmark seen in the circulation immediately distal to a severe stenosis. The term Parvus means small or low amplitude peak, indicating that the overall pulse of blood is weak. Tardus means late, referring to a prolonged systolic acceleration time, meaning the blood flow takes too long to reach its peak velocity because it is squeezing through a tight blockage. This dampened delayed waveform is a critical indicator of downstream parenchymal hypoperfusion. Whether you are investigating a primary renal artery stenosis or evaluating a patient for unexplained chronic kidney disease, identifying a Parvus-Tardus waveform confirms that a hemodynamically significant large vessel obstruction sits upstream. When ultrasound fails or more detail is needed, we move to advanced imaging. Computed tomographic angiography, or CTA, provides excellent high-resolution three-dimensional reconstructions. It is phenomenal for visualizing fibromuscular dysplasia and accessory vessels. And unlike MRI, its images are completely unaffected by previously placed metallic stents. The drawback is the heavy iodinated contrast load, which carries a real risk of acute kidney injury in diabetic and chronically diseased patients. Magnetic resonance angiography, or MRA, avoids both ionizing radiation and iodinated contrast. However, it cannot see through stented vessels. More importantly, its use has steeply declined due to a severe clinical trap. If a patient has a glomerular filtration rate of less than 30 milliliters per minute per 1.73 square meters, the required gadolinium contrast exposure is highly associated with nephrogenic systemic fibrosis. This is an incurable, devastating fibrotic skin and organ disease. We now move to the absolute gold standard, invasive intra-arterial angiography. This modality provides unmatched diagnostic clarity, precisely pinpointing the exact anatomical location, the morphological characteristics, and the true functional severity of the vascular lesion. However, this is an expensive, highly invasive procedure that demands a specialized catheterization laboratory, highly trained interventional operators, costly fluoroscopy, and significant nursing care. Because threading a catheter directly into the perirenal aorta carries significant risk, diagnostic intra-arterial angiography is rarely performed merely to look at the anatomy. Today, it is almost exclusively executed simultaneously with the planned therapeutic intervention. If the dye confirms a critical stenosis, the operator simply deploys the balloon and stent through the exact same catheter to permanently cure the lesion right there and there. Let us look specifically at the radiological hallmarks of fibromuscular dysplasia. When you perform intra-arterial angiography on these patients, you will see the classic string of beads sign. This appearance represents focal segments of severe cellular dysplasia, specifically medial fibroplasia, which physically distorts the vessel wall into a series of tight narrowings and wider aneurysmal pouches. Because this pathology is strictly non-calcified and does not contain hard cholesterol plaques. Visualizing this sign directly prompts the interventional operator to take immediate action. They simply perform a balloon angioplasty right then and there to stretch out the fibrous webs. You never deploy a metal stent for this specific lesion. If a medical PG entrance question describes a patient whose angiogram reveals a string of beads pattern in the mid to distal renal artery, this should immediately make you think of fibromuscular dysplasia and a treatment plan of balloon angioplasty alone. While invasive angiography is definitively the gold standard, it carries immense and life-threatening risks that examiners love to test. The most feared hazard is the atheroembolic threat. When you push stiff physical catheters through a diseased, plaque-filled aorta, the scraping forcibly fractures fragile atherosclerotic plaques. This unleashes a shower of cholesterol crystals directly into the renal microvessels. The result is catastrophic. These crystals trigger irreversible inflammatory tissue necrosis, entirely destroying the kidney you are trying to save. This is called atheroembolic renal disease. Do not fall for the clinical trap of embolic protection devices. Prospective trials have shown that using tiny physical nets in the circulation offers absolutely zero protection from the embolic debris that breaks off after the device is withdrawn. You must remember that the major complication rate for these procedures exceeds 5%.